And welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. I am your host, Jason Miles, and if you're new to the show, wherever you're watching or listening, please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit that notifications bell as we're adding new streams to the show constantly. Also, good news, it looks like Sublation Media has posted the audio of our launch party on their channel. So if you're curious on what it was like, what was said, go over to Sublation and check that out. Also, while you're there, Djene Bajalan has a new article up that is well worth a read. That being said, let me bring in the news crew for the evening. Starting off, coming from lovely Miami, Florida, weighing in at 175 pounds. He is my homie, my dog. Man of the Mau Mau Hour. He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Mine. 175, that would be like elementary school.
If you were 175 in elementary school, you took everybody's cookies out of their lunch.
That would be something.
That's exactly what you did at 175. Or you were a pro wrestler and you were definitely suplexing the shit out of all those little kids in the sandbox. You went to school in New York, so that was the asphalt. No sandbox.
That's jokes.
Also, he is your favorite middle manager, the deep state of the Death Star. He is back from his manager's retreat. You may have seen the photos of him in his lovely red tracksuit. He was a star on the panel. You'll be able to hear everything Kuba had to say. Please welcome Deep State Kuba.
Soundboard, I missed you the most.
Kuba, how are you?
It's nice to be rounding up the news again. I was all ready to talk about affairs in the greater Slavic world, and then Boris Johnson, Bojo himself, had to go and resign. So now we're back in the Anglo space, I guess.
Well, speaking of Boris Johnson, let's bring in everyone's favorite British professor in Middle America. You may know him from his many appearances on various shows. He has the best-selling Turkish history book, as he was telling me earlier today. It's been translated into 75 languages. Djene Bajalan.
Greetings, everybody. Good to be here for an exciting evening of news, and it's nice to be back in Middle America, where the portions of food are much bigger and less expensive.
That's the first thing I noticed. I just only live across the imaginary line, and whenever I cross the imaginary line and go anywhere, I can't eat because the portions are so much larger, and I'm finally used to like eating what normal people should eat and not like so I had to drop my lady friend off at the airport, and so we were early. We actually made it, and I was like, let's go to Denny's, because the normal place we go wasn't open. We go to Denny's, and no one effed up the biscuit order this time, and I ordered the Grand Slamwich, which actually my date said, "What the fuck is the Grand Slamwich?" I was like, "Oh, we'll see." And I couldn't eat it. I used to fucking polish those things off with an order of chicken strips back in the day. You know how you go to Denny's well, maybe not Pascal. You don't know about you New Yorkers. You guys don't know about this.
I've lived in Florida for a while. I know Denny's.
But they have.
But you weren't a young man. You were grown, Pascal.
No, I was not growing up going to Denny's.
I ordered.
What's the spot?
I ordered Zal a children's breakfast the other day. And I came in and I was like, this could feed a family of 4. I was like, what kind of children are they growing in? It was like 5 pieces of like French toast, like 3 sausage links. Like the kid, I was like, is this the children's portion? I was like, what are the regular humans eating?
No. You thought it was a children's portion. No, this is the breakfast that's made from children.
I remember being a young man and we would like hang out and we'd go to Denny's late at night and we ordered all this food and I don't drink, so I would actually eat it all. I couldn't eat shit, man. Couldn't eat shit. Someone says Waffle House is superior.
If you want to have a
late night, Waffle House means something to me. Like if I was at Gene's house right now, we're hanging out and we're gonna go after the show. Yes, we would go to Waffle House after the show. And
that's where you take people that you want to impress. Good people.
Good people. The last tour photo I have from my group with my ex, there's like 15 of us at a Waffle House in what's that state black people shouldn't be in? Mississippi.
Wow. I was gonna say you're not really narrowing it down, but yeah,
you did narrow it down.
You're still in Mississippi. You asked for it at this point.
We call it in the Bajalan house the Maison de Gaufres because it sounds classier. But Sarah and I used to go to Waffle House a lot when I first came to America. But Sarah's now, she's older, wiser, and she just doesn't want to go to a Waffle House anymore and sit down at a dirty table.
No, she wants to waffle. Don't.
There was a Waffle House we went to in Winston-Salem, I think, when I was on tour in 2009, and I didn't realize you could smoke inside. I thought I walked into a fucking time machine.
Smoking in a restaurant, that is... I vaguely remember smoking on an airplane, flying on a...
Wow!
I couldn't believe that was ever legal.
Pascal and Toussaint, do you guys remember that? Smoking on airplanes?
Smoking on airplanes. I don't even remember that at all.
Yeah.
I don't think I do.
There's smoking and non-smoking sections.
Yeah,
I do remember. You know why I remember that? Because I remember them having the little electronic sign that said smoking and non-smoking. So obviously there had to be some smoking sections. Yep.
They had smoking. I remember flying to Austria as a teenager and just everybody in the back of the airplane just smoking those cigars, like not messing around, just chain smoking in the back of an airplane.
Someone says Anton says he smoked on chain smoked on a 10-hour flight. Jesus Christ.
Jeez, that's a lot.
Oh, the good old days, I guess one would say. I'm also, if you can't see, I'm wearing my Metallica shirt in honor of Metallica stealing the show in Stranger Things season 4.
Yeah, and if you like Stranger Things, check out friend of show Mike Watson's new article in Sublation magazine about Stranger Things, where he mentions Metallica.
I'm going to take Mike Watson and battle him against Freddie DeBoer. Freddie DeBoer is the left's biggest hipster. I said it. Deal with it, Freddie.
Wow. Calling out Freddie DeBoer like that.
Biggest hipster. And I hope he understands. I'm totally kidding. Because if you take that seriously, you're silly.
Does he live in Brooklyn?
No, but he doesn't like Stranger Things. And
he doesn't like Stranger. Basically, anything that makes people happy, he's like, fuck that.
I'm gonna be honest, Jason. Like everybody was going on about Stranger Things, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna watch it. I liked season 1. Season 2 was fine. I got bored in season 3. And gave up.
I liked season 3 because they bring up something that no one really talks about, and that's how the mall culture, and if you really get into it, the savings and loan bullshit from the mid-'80s destroyed small town downtown America.
But they did that on King of the Hill better.
No, they talk about Walmart on King of the Hill. They don't talk about the mall.
Fair enough.
But it also showed, I thought season 3 showed what replaced the small town Main Street culture. And mall culture was a thing, right? Teenagers hang out in the food court. old people doing their mall walking, right? It wasn't entirely sterile. Like, the Walmartification is a lot worse.
You think so?
Yeah, because I think Walmart has so much less to offer, especially the enclosed mall, which you drove to it, but then it was a pedestrian space, a pedestrian shared space, gives people some place to hang out, whereas the supercenter version of Walmart, which is just one giant box, strip mall, may be externally linked to other giant boxes, but there's none of that connective tissue. There's none of that shared space where you might do something on your own. No, it's just parking lot.
I agree. The mall. I don't know. Mall culture was definitely. There were movies that were almost instructional manuals in the early '80s on how mall culture was supposed to operate, with like Valley Girl and Fast Times. And living in a city that was destroyed by a mall that was maybe 10 miles away. I have a certain love-hate relationship with them, especially as I learn more about them.
Who's got the best literature on this?
You probably have to go to JSTOR. There's probably some nerd that wrote 20,000 words on why malls suck. Have you read anything, Kuba or G?
I don't know to what extent he talks about malls specifically, but City of Quartz by Mike Davis.
A little. There's a book from a guy from San Francisco that wrote about Home Wreckers, talks a little bit about the savings and loan scandal and how money was moved into these malls. Adam Curtis talks a little bit about it, but I haven't really seen anyone literally write a book about how these things kind of destroyed Main Street USA.
So is it safe to say that the digital shopping, does online shopping destroy the mall culture?
It's part of it.
I mean, I think Walmart also, as you shift in the way that retail is organized around malls, right? Like, because there's the indoor mall and then there's the strip mall, and the strip mall paves the way for Walmart, breaks down all the connective tissue, forces you to drive, even if you want to get to the food court in a strip mall, you basically have to drive, right? There's no food court. You have to figure out which chain you want to eat in and then meet people there. But all of that is now at risk from online shopping, to an extent where I don't know if there is going to be a kind of shared market experience, right?
But the malls as buildings might actually survive in a way that the strip mall can't, because at least with some of the mall space, you can convert it to other kind of leisure use. So in Britain, we don't have the same issue with malls. I think they restricted the construction of out-of-town shopping centers. There was a few big ones, Metro Center in Newcastle, Meadowhall in Sheffield, and the kind of process was they started building malls in the middle of cities, which of course kind of like ended the old style shops where all the shops moved to the mall. But now there's the emergence of strip malls in England. But those old malls, those old shopping centers, they're becoming entertainment places where they have like escape rooms, arcades, bowling alleys, movie theaters, all those kind of things. So malls themselves might be reconstructed as a space for entertainment, whereas with these strip malls, they may just get eliminated, and you'll just have like Wild West style ghost towns, because that space can't be used for anything else other than retail, right?
Well, there becomes big fights in municipalities over what you're going to do with it, especially in a situation like East Oakland with Walmart. There was a giant Walmart in East Oakland kind of by where the Coliseum is. And the city and county have been fighting over what to do with that space for so long. It's just kind of been an empty space. If you've ever seen where malls have died, Corpus Christi, Texas has a dead mall that I was actually in. They wouldn't let me photograph it because I'd never seen anything like that before. I'd never seen vines growing inside of a mall, and this was 2015 or so. I think some of that space is getting torn down that I physically have seen in my travels around the country, around the U.S., and turned into housing.
Mm-hmm.
There is a new model to have your upscale housing with a bit of an upscale outdoor shopping center. I don't know when the last time you were in the Bay Area, Kuba, but you know, the Emeryville model.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember the Emeryville, and it's kind of a halfway house between an actual urban living experience and the suburbs where kind of a lot of the young people who moved there grew up in. And I think, but to get to Djene's point about repurposing malls, one thing that you have to reckon is in the United States, there's a much greater appetite for just abandoning built environments and letting things degrade and rot rather than trying to like salvage physical infrastructure. It's particularly bad in the commuter towns where everybody just wants to build a new thing, one highway exit over. Nobody wants to deal with your old ass abandoned mall that still has the stink of failure all over Orange Julius.
Would you guys all agree, though, and it has a lot to do with the way we look at property in this country, especially when talking about suburban communities where you're always
so much more land. There's so much more land. In Britain, you can't just like abandon a load of land because it's expensive. And on the edge of the cities, you have something called green belt, which restricts the kind of construction that you can build.
Like Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, so you have to make the best with the. Now the problem is if your town like has nothing to attract people to, it still ends up as kind of urban wasteland. But there are like attempts to renovate buildings. For example, in Hull, Hull's totally like wrecked economically. But they're trying to do stuff with some of these old abandoned buildings. There's the old British Home Stores building. It was a big, department store that was just abandoned for years. They're trying to turn it into luxury housing. The old, like, in the early 90s, they opened up like the first big shopping center in the middle of Hull, Princess Key, and that was the place to go. You had like your big department stores on the first and second floor, and then on the top floor you had all independent shops. It was kind of like it was called Top Deck. It was very cool. The kids would go around, hang around there. There were arcades. That all went away in the 2000s and 2010s. But now they're trying to just redo that space with like restaurants and they have a bowling alley. They have like a movie theater at the top. So they're trying to make it an evening space because you can't just like write down like a huge construction project like that in the middle of the city, because not only is land at a premium, knocking something down in the middle of a city is like hugely disruptive.
Expensive too.
It's expensive and disruptive. Whereas if you just like knocking down some dump mall on the edge of town, I mean, you can just leave that. And America has land in the oodles. Maybe that's a bit different on the East Coast, but
the interesting thing is, but I have to say, Canada, Australia, other land abundant countries don't have nearly the same comfort with abandoning entire towns, right? Like you have in the United States. For instance, the United States lost one of its major cities, Detroit, right? This was a globally significant metropolis, a major commercial and industrial center, a major cultural center, right? One of the most populous cities in the United States. And it was just allowed to decay and fall apart to the point where vast stretches of it have returned to nature. And not even Japan is okay with that, and they have a shrinking population.
I think there's something in American culture where We like the renewal part. We have whole TV shows about fixing up some dump, and and it's about money. It's about flipping it. It's about renting it out.
Yeah,
We,
it's
Well,
just
I'm
that
we
the
like the renewal
market.
part.
Let the market decide. If the city
Right.
is destroyed, it's because it didn't survive in the marketplace.
Also, someone will come in and buy it and revitalize it.
Yeah, Mark Cuban or Jeff Bezos or
well,
Mhm.
speaking of Detroit, before we pivot, remember the Silver Dome sold for $300,000. Remember that?
That's it.
Yep. But this we have two Haitians on the show today.
One of them was not introduced, and the other one
No,
was.
no. It's when someone made a comment about us making this a sausage fest, I decided to double down on my on patriarchy and just not introduce the skirt.
Got it.
Ooh, you definitely doubling down on the big
I'm going
the
I'm going full manosphere.
too, right?
Full,
Lucky I
full
have
man.
Tanya now.
It's just
Congratulations, by the way.
but to my two Haitian comrades,
Mhm.
M. Toussaint in our earlier morning production call, that she didn't know production calls are not scheduled.
Oh man,
Uh, you
I gotta
might,
be dressed all the time now.
well,
Yeah.
like we said, cover the beef and you're fine.
No more Donald Duck in it. Okay.
But you brought up an interesting point that it has been a year since the assassination of Jovenel Moise.
Correct. Correct. Does it feel like
What?
it's been a year?
Can you read this comment?
Sure. 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 Haiti on Thursday, that would be today, commemorates the 1 year anniversary of the murder of President Jovenel Moise, whose killing created a power vacuum and allowed the country's gangs to expand their territory and even take over the headquarters of the nation's courts. Haitian police have arrested more than 40 people, but have yet to charge anyone in the murder, in which a group of gunmen that included former Colombian soldiers stormed Moise's home in a pre dawn raid.
That would be correct.
That would be correct. So, where are we now, a year later? I feel like that's the question.
That is.
I
So,
think that what we're seeing today is basically the implosion of the concept, the even notion of a Haitian nation state. Even though the concept was somewhat precarious before the fact, what has turned to be the case is that the United States, unwilling to really invest any material resources on the ground in Haiti because of the rather negative history it has in doing so, has surrendered the investigation into the murder of Jovenel Moise in the hands of an incompetent, uh, you know, sitting, president in, of pro tempore, if you will, Ariel Henry, who has been accused of being actually one of the co-conspirators in the assassination. One of the things that we have to understand is that the political situation in Haiti is so tenuous that there is no political situation, meaning that no one knows exactly when there will be an election, if there will be an election, and we have literally, pretty much more so in the Port-au-Prince area, we have these gangs that are orchestrating as if they have controls of territories at the behest of themselves. Some argue at the behest of the state. Some argue at the behest of international actors or the oligarchs. But the bottom line, what we are seeing is that there has been no major advance. Yes, we had the implication of Colombian mercenaries. There were some 40 some odd individuals who thought to have had participated. 18 of them were arrested. Only less than five of them have been tried. We're still trying to find day by day individuals who are suggested to be in or brought in. But the bottom line is that no one is discussing what the overall real world material causes were of the assassination of Jovenel Moise. Ryan Grimm of The Intercept had some interesting reporting talking about how there was a U.S. ambassador who had stated that it might be to our betterment to get rid of this guy, Jovenel Moise, meaning that he is not playing ball. There are some saying that he was reaching out. Well, we know he was reaching out to the Turks as a means of trying to find an alternative power vacuum to the oligarchs in terms of developing the country. There are some say that he was willing to even reach out to the Russians, and that could have been the final straw that broke the camel's back. But one thing that I'm safe to say, and I have said for since the assassination, is that a Haitian president is not getting assassinated without a green light by the U.S. State Department. And the question becomes, how high up the food chain was the State Department in ordering this assassination, and why exactly, in the face of all Joe Biden is facing with immigration problems from South America and Latin America, is he willing to allow Haiti to collapse into this chaotic state without offering even a modicum of a solution? It's a question that I haven't found an appropriate answer for myself.
Mm.
And Son, any thoughts?
Well, I can tell you, Henri says there's going to be an election. He just doesn't know when.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, he's pushing for it. Guys, we got to do it. We don't have a date yet.
But is there any infrastructure to have an election? I mean, what does an election look like in Haiti?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very good question, Gene. I don't think that there is a kind of political infrastructure to stably have an election, but I don't even understand. I don't know who are the political actors that have the capacity to build infrastructure. Someone asked where the oligarchs and how they hold their power. Well, the oligarchs, as we said before, are a group of individuals. Many of them come from foreign or Middle Eastern origin who have been operating in Haiti since the early 20th century, who, through their ability to maintain market share, have dominated the large supermajority of the commerce in Haiti. So what you have is you have a small percentage of the population, some would say less than 50 families, who control something like 85 to 90% of the population's economy. Many of them have Syrio-Lebanese or Middle Eastern backgrounds. Some of them have European backgrounds, and they have a kind of racial economic hierarchy in the country where they extract resources from the country, have very little fealty to the national nation state or history of the country, and exist in a kind of separate sphere of influence where they have direct relationship with the State Department and also orchestrate any kind of political instability in the country that's necessary to facilitate their economic demands on the island.
What the way that you're describing the situation in Haiti, would it be fair to compare it with a country like Libya, for instance, where the process of state collapse has gotten so prevalent, has progressed so far that you don't have that infrastructure to return a modicum of stability and regularity over the whole territory, but instead you essentially have to deal block by block with whoever has locally managed to cobble together enough force and enough organization to make it their territory.
Very astute comparison, Cuba, by the way. But one of the things that's fascinating about the conundrum that you bring forth is that what we're seeing in Haiti is really a consequence of what is known as the Republic of Port-au-Prince, in that these gangs are not operating in the suburbs or in the hills or in the mountains or in the other provinces. This is a consequence of the political apparatus of the whole country being so centralized in the capital that if you control the capital and you can neutralize the capital, you can neutralize the country. So I think that's a fair metaphor between what you're seeing in Haiti and the devolution of the Haitian nation state. Again, the goal here is not to romanticize the Haitian nation state prior to the troubles after the Jovenel Moise assassination. There was profound corruption and internal, striations and problems that existed going back to the fall of the Duvalier regime, even including the Duvalier regime. But there is such a complete lack of order and chaos that has been unseen before, where now these gangs and warlords are under total control over territories where they can take up whole legal infrastructure at their own whim. That, I mean, my mom has friends who have had family members kidnapped by gangs. I mean, this is not something that is distant within the consciousness of Haitian society. She literally was talking to a friend of her, literally, who had her sister kidnapped by one of these gangs. So this has influenced every aspect and level of Haitian society, and it's basically become a terror zone for many people.
Who exactly are these gangs?
Disaffected street youth who are acquiring weapons from the outside, mostly the United States, who are, some would say, being financed by either former oligarchs or the rogue elements of the Haitian nation state, or some are suspecting maybe by international actors to maintain destabilization because they believe that resource extraction is easier when there is no government. Don't forget, there were, Hillary Clinton's brother had gold mine extraction contracts in Haiti. There are oil deposits in Haiti. There's iridium in Haiti. There are natural resources that have some value, and some would argue maybe it's more valuable to have a complete backwoods, destabilized government that won't get in our way than to have to deal with any government at all. I mean, Djene and Kuba, you guys have been in enough destabilized countries to know that, contrary to what people didn't realize, you can make money in chaos.
That's true. However, I also hasten to point out that the United States, especially American officialdom, has been very good at squandering opportunities. For instance, in Iraq and in Afghanistan, both countries are very resource rich, but despite the cratering of any local opposition to American extraction or American economic interest, the U.S. was never able to realize any of those gains. And in many cases, they accrued to Chinese firms or other geopolitical rivals of the United States. So you can't even have an indirect benefit with your allies picking up the profits from local extraction. And when you bring up the State Department, too, we're a long way away from the Dulles brothers. And the rot, the decay in the infrastructure of governance in Haiti, in certain ways, is a much more exaggerated version of a similar bureaucratic institutional decay that you see in the center of the United States, where institutions that once were quite responsive and capable, now I wonder if anybody needed to greenlight the hit in Haiti from the State Department, because the disorganization, the lack of control, the politicization, the factional infighting at the peak of cabinet level departments in the United States is so great that a moderately ambitious middle level operator can actually claim enough autonomy so that they wouldn't even have to go all the way to their boss.
But also, private interests in the United States are so powerful. It seems perfectly plausible that you can have wealthy individuals based in the United States making use of American law, building basically their own foreign policy, hiring mercenaries, bringing people over, and working specifically as private citizens to engage in their own foreign policy. I mean, one thing I would say is probably very different from, let's say, Iraq and Afghanistan and Haiti, is that the American apparatus has far more historical experience in dealing with Haiti, including a long period of occupation, the fact that Haiti is very close by, the fact that there are large Haitian diasporas in the United States. I think America has a far deeper penetration into Haitian politics than it has into a place like Libya, Iraq, or Afghanistan. And there's probably far more, let's say, institutional, or at least private, even private institutions have far more capacity to deal and understand what is going on in Haiti.
And I think to pick up on that, much of American foreign policy was already privatized, beginning in the Clinton years, but through the network of think tanks, of institutes, of journals, of the other kind of parastate infrastructure that appears to be publicly oriented, but is in fact a creature of its donors. And that was how the privatization of peak foreign policy could take place. You had to contest it out through these institutions, but that was the point of entry for private interest. Now, I don't even know if you need to duke it out. If you're a sufficiently powerful billionaire with your own sort of private in-house security, private in-house policy shop, private in-house analysts, economists, other experts, then under conditions of political sclerosis, when there's major geopolitical events elsewhere that are distracting peak attention, then you can just do it yourself unilaterally. And nobody's going to arrest you. Nobody's going to investigate hard enough to make trouble for you. And it is indeed scandalous that a year has passed and we have no answers as to who assassinated the president of a sovereign, independent nation at the heart of the Caribbean.
There's a lot of intimidation that goes back to, well, it can go back to the gangs, but the gangs are also affiliated with politicians and all kinds of people in power. So there were 3 convictions in the U.S. around this case, but the case is still going on, but it's on its 5th judge. Wow. The other 4 dropped out due to intimidation, or they wouldn't say, but we know what that is.
In Haiti, Toussaint?
This is in the United States.
It's in the States?
Yeah. So imagine how it is in Haiti, the kind of intimidation people are dealing with.
What say you, Robert?
I think she's absolutely correct, man, because the people fail to realize that even in a country as poor as Haiti, you have international actors that have been, working on economic plans. For example, the sweatshop industry, manufacturing underwear, clothing, all that stuff. That's a major industry in Haiti, and those economic interests do not like the fact that you have workers trying to strike for increasing minimum wage. They have connections to oligarchs who will make sure that things get done to make sure their interests are protected. Whenever trade rights or rights to trades are negotiated in Haiti, they're not having citizens that are normally related to the government getting on those conversations. They are members of the oligarchy who have exclusive roles in negotiating what kind of trade impacts are being signed and deals are being signed that affect the country. So there are interests of a higher level that are definitely in the capacity to put pressure on all types of branches of government that are interested in resulting in terms of what is going to happen when the determination is coming down to what is really going to go to transpire in terms of finding out who committed this crime.
I have a question, Pascal. Given this long-term sort of chaos that takes place in Haiti, the breakdown of law and order, all this kind of social, the social consequences of the collapse of the Haitian state, is there any sense that, well, there doesn't seem to be a left, but is there a neo-Duvalierist movement that is looking back to the Papa Doc days and saying, you know what, as bad as Papa Doc was, at least you could walk the streets of Port-au-Prince safely at night?
Well, there absolutely is a neo-Duvalierist element in the atmosphere. As a matter of fact, one of Duvalier's grandsons was considered to be one of a potential candidate for the next presidency, as a matter of fact. And not only that, there has been a lot of reminiscence amongst people saying, like, at least during Duvalier, The streets were on. We had the electricity worked. The streets were clean, and everyone knew how to keep themselves in check. So there is definitely a romanticization with the Doualier regime. Some people would have argued that the political party of Jovenel Moise was a neo-devaluist, revanchist party in and of itself. The party of PHTK was considered by some to be a neo-devaluist regime because of its attempt to incorporate some of the kind of black nationalist ideological trappings that were known for under Duvalier. So there is a certain romanticization and fetishization for the Duvalier days. Definitely in the case of the father, Papa Doc, in the consciousness of the Haitian people. And it's very sad, and it's quite.
You saw the same thing happen in the Philippines. So,
Yeah, sure.
With Bongbong Marcos getting elected, the Marcos family never really left power after Marcos left the country. His wife stayed for forever in the country, and there's various family members that were in different Senate seats and state and local government seats. So it's no shock that Duterte leaves and maybe a worse figure with Bongbong Marcos comes into power. All that said, let's pivot to another country that is looking quite silly at the moment. Djene's homeland, the land of what is the UK the land of? Fish and chips?
Fish and chips.
And Rolling Stone.
Imperial decline.
Imperial
Ooh,
decline.
I was trying not to be mean. But okay, there's that.
Djene. Also, I mean, Boris Johnson is one of the few world leaders where sometimes, I kind of wish that the UK had a Haitian-style retirement plan.
Necklacing.
I'm a little worried that he'll come back.
Ooh.
I don't think Boris Johnson.
Well, Toussaint, can you read the
Sure.
quotes on the screen, Toussaint, please?
Sure.
Toussaint is also Vanna White for the show.
Vanna White.
Once again,
Pat always introduces Vanna. I'll just say that.
Black
Right.
Vanna. Can I call you Black Vanna? Can I call you Blanna?
Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced his resignation Thursday amid a mass revolt by top members of his government, marking an end to 3 tumultuous years in power, in which he brazenly bent and sometimes broke the rules of British politics. Months of defiance ended almost with a shrug as Johnson stood outside number 10 Downing Street and conceded that his party wanted him gone. "Them's the breaks," he said.
That was the break.
Right.
Yeah, and then somebody did the sad trumpet noise.
Have I told you the story of what happened to Boris Johnson's Turkish ancestor? So Boris Johnson has a Turkish ancestor called Ali Kemal. And Ali Kemal was he was basically against the Young Turks, and after the First World War, he came into the government, and he issued an arrest warrant for Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, which proved to be not a very good career move for him, and ended up with him getting lynched outside a courtroom, I think. So, not the Boris Johnson does not have. His family does not have a great history of successful ends in politics. Well, that's the Boris Johnson thing. But yeah, he's gone. After a month, it's been like all the time I've been in Britain, the ongoing story is like, how much longer can Boris Johnson survive? And there's been some pretty big challenges. A couple of months back, there was a leadership contest within the Conservative Party. So just to explain to the viewers, the British system is a very strange system. It's a very archaic system. And so the Prime Minister is the leader of the political party that holds the majority in Westminster. So, but the Prime Minister is not elected on a mass mandate. He's just an MP. He's just with a constituency, just like any other MP. And his position as Prime Minister is entirely dependent on his position as the leader of the party. A few months ago, there was a challenge. There was a vote to see if he would, if there was a vote of confidence. He won that vote within his party, but he was gravely wounded by that vote because most of the backbenchers, that is the MPs who do not have some kind of position in the government, and because the executive is staffed by MPs from the governing party, there's a lot of conservative MPs in the government. Most of the backbenchers did not back Boris Johnson, even though he ultimately won this no confidence vote. And it was kind of a Pyrrhic victory. Margaret Thatcher, similar things that happened to her. There was a leadership challenge. She won, but she ended up having to go later. So Boris Johnson has had increasing, there's been increasing, unrest within the Conservative Party about the future, the future of the Conservative Party. And most recently, I think the most important thing for Conservative MPs, there are a number of by-elections, including in safe Conservative seats, in which the Conservatives lost. And that seems to have sort of triggered the rats to escape the Boris Johnson vote. And now Boris Johnson has resigned, and there will be a contest within the caucus of the Conservative Party in Parliament over who will be the leader of the party, and therefore who will be the new Prime Minister. And Boris Johnson is staying on as a caretaker for now, but there will be a contest because I think the Conservatives are counting that, Boris is now a liability in an election, so they're going to try and get a new leader, and they're going to try and, turn the ship around. The Conservatives still have a lot of things going in their favor, even as they become more unpopular. The way the electoral system works, the way constituencies are set up in the country, the Conservatives have like a geographical advantage. But if people, for example, start voting tactically in the elections, that there is a formal or informal alliance between the Liberal Party and the Labour Party, it could spell the end of the Conservative government. Not that I think there's much hope for a Labour/Liberal coalition government to really change the direction of the country, but the Conservatives are concerned they might lose power. And then, of course, the broader context for this is endless scandals in the Conservative Party, partly to do with breaking COVID rules, sex scandals in the Parliament, and also at the same time, you're having an enormous inflationary crisis in Great Britain. Cost of living is going up. People are having a hard time. So you have all the same problems you have in the United States related to global supply chains, but compounded by the economic fallout of Brexit, which a lot of the big plans that the Conservative talked about when Brexit happened, which was about redistributing wealth in the country, leveling up regions of the country that had been previously ignored. A lot of those things have turned out to be nothing. And so people are increasingly disillusioned and angry about the dire economic situation in the country. So I think the Conservatives, who are a little bit more able than American Republicans to engage in this sort of spend national conservatism, I think the Conservatives are looking for a new leader who can stem the loss of support of the Conservative Party and help maintain them in power. There's still a long time to go till an election, so they still have a bit of time to turn things around. A new Prime Minister does not mean a new election.
There's a super chat on the screen asking about Hugh Grant tweeting out that people should play Benny Hill music while the Tories were getting interviewed outside of Parliament, and people did it. Anything about this, Gene?
I vaguely heard this story, but I did not actually see anybody doing this. But this sounds that there is a I would say, a great deal of discontent towards the Conservative government, and particularly towards Boris Johnson. Although he still has strong areas of support, this move may not work out for them, because Boris Johnson, he was able to sort of capitalize on Brexit. He delivered Brexit, and I think there are some people who are still loyal to him. So this may be problematic for the Conservative Party, but we'll see. We'll have to see how it goes and who they elect as their new leader. But a lot of conservatives are really angry about all these scandals, particularly the COVID ones, where it looked like Boris Johnson was, having parties and just having a good time, breaking the COVID restrictions, which on two levels is concerning. Firstly, it's like they're being hypocrites. That's the sort of surface level. People who were not able to see dying relatives are really bitter about this, right? People who had to leave their grandmothers to alone in their homes with no one to see them over COVID are really bitter that Boris Johnson was,
doing whatever Boris Johnson wanted.
Doing what he wanted. The other thing is a deeper question. It's like, were these conservatives passing restrictions for COVID that they themselves didn't even believe in, and were just doing this for opportunistic reasons? So there's a whole sort of crisis in legitimacy. The problem for the opposition is that the opposition has been completely docile and hampered. The Labour Party has been waging war on the left within its party rather than emerging as an effective opposition. Their strategy is largely, let's hope the Conservative Party implodes and we can pick up the pieces.
So I've got a question to follow up there. The only major policy program that the Tory government under Boris Johnson managed to see through was Brexit, which was a catastrophic own goal. Is the UK becoming ungovernable?
That's a really good question. I mean, it depends how you define ungovernable. I still think
more or less than the United States.
I think we're heading more and more in that direction. I think politics is becoming more polarized, and the culture wars as framing politics is seeping into the United Kingdom, and that's not just like it's not just a parallel. There's literal connections connecting right-wing politics to right-wing American groups, to right-wing British groups, and so we are seeing this kind of more radical right-wing politics taking over and becoming more and more dominant in the Conservative Party, and the opposition that we have is not very effective. And because of the nature of the electoral system, I don't think it's super likely in the short term that the Conservative government will fall. They may lose seats, but the British system is a kind of winner takes all. You can win absolute power in the Parliament, on 43, 42% of the vote. And you don't need to govern with anybody else because our electoral system is a first past the post system. So so long as the Conservative Party can maintain cohesion, now Brexit is over, that issue is off the table. They may well be able to pull it back, and they may be able to remobilize some of that Brexit sentiment. And the point I would make an addendum about Brexit. The problem with Brexit was not necessarily the idea to leave the European Union. There would have been good ways and good reasons to leave the European Union. It's just that the way that Britain left the European Union was a way which benefited capital and the Conservative Party, and not one. There was no Lexit, no left-wing Brexit, because the left, historically, people should be aware, it was the left in British politics that opposed the European Union and the right that supported it. And the reason was the European Union imposed all kinds of restrictions on economic policies that countries could take. It imposed a kind of fiscal discipline on countries. It created and it increasingly moved aspects of the administrative state away from national governments to a supranational government, which was very hard for that lacked democratic oversight, right? And that's good for capital, right? The Lexit version of Brexit would have been, using this sovereignty to engage in redistributive policies, but that's not really what is going on.
That was never going to happen.
Well, it wasn't going to happen with the constellation of forces that were bringing about Brexit.
And it was never, and those constellations were a consequence of political and institutional economic developments with very deep roots. And if the UK had the ability to do a Labour Brexit, then it would have been necessary because it would have had a strong enough left to evade the EU, to push the EU in a left direction. But of course, we got the result that we did because the Conservatives have been in ascendancy, and there is no institutional, organizational, economic, you name it, foundation for the kind of left that you'd need to do. It was always a fever dream.
And not only that, it's rekindled problems in Northern Ireland, which
Scotland.
Scotland is.
Well, it's offered Scotland a solution.
Although again, Scotland leaving the Union is again, it's an open question whether Britain would allow it now, as they had a referendum, and also whether the European Union would want Scotland to secede from Britain and become part of the European Union, because within the European Union themselves, especially Spain, that precedent, which we saw in Catalonia, is something they do not want to encourage. So as much, for example, as the Europeans might be like, oh yeah, like getting Scotland in the European Union would be cool, it would be a punishment for Britain and England. On the flip side, that sets all kinds of uncomfortable precedents for other countries where you have secessionist movements that are quite powerful. Because remember, the Spanish, when the Catalonians voted for independence, they just rolled on in, arrested the leaders, sent them into exile, and they were like, no, that whole like...
Not up for negotiation.
Not up for negotiation.
Yeah, I think that a lot will hinge on Northern Ireland, that for the Brits, for the Europeans rather, for the EU, Scotland, like you said, is a double-edged sword. As much as you might want to indulge your revenge against the English, you end up creating headaches for yourself. However, Northern Ireland reunifying with the rest of the country would be a solution to a bigger headache for the Europeans. And potentially that's where the fragmentation begins.
Well, on that note, before Djene Bajalan goes over the hour, we are at an hour. It is time for us to go to our special patrons-only champagne room where we have a call-in segment. So all you guys commenting, have something to say, you can call in. You have a little bit of a back and forth. A little bit. Can't take up too much time. So, if you haven't done it already, become a patron. It's really cheap. It is as low as $30 for the entire year. And you get to be part of movie night, where I have decided this month we are going to watch the movie that actually triggers me. It is a trigger warning for me. I decided Tucson because I asked a question on our sports show, Beyond the Red Zone, and I've gotten responses from people, various, from Twitter to patrons responding. They're like, Jason, we want to watch Fly By Night.
Oh dear.
And we're not going to do it like we do normal movie night where we watch the whole movie and then we stop. No. We are going to let people yell out, Jason, pause it. Why the hell did he just do that?
Oh
Who the
my
hell would do that?
gosh.
So
Pause
Kuba
power?
What'd you say?
Pause power? That's kind of a big deal.
Pause power. I'm going for it. Let's have fun with this movie night because it's a little different than what we usually do. And I really want everyone to know why Fly By Night is my Rocky Horror Picture Show and The Room all rolled into one beautiful, stereotypical package. Kuba, you watched it.
I did. It is a
mess.
It's like a train lost control, the brakes failed, it jumped the track, and just as it was going to fall off the bridge into the river, a plane fell from the sky and crashed into it.
You'll be surprised how many people love the crack.
It practically sells itself.
I want to watch it also with Djene Bajalan because I want him to see that movie and get his response on the portrayal of black people in that movie. I don't know if Pascal will be allowed to watch it because his heart can't take it.
My heart will be fine. Thank you very much.
Your heart can't. Seriously, this movie goes out of its way to destroy East Coast hip hop and Muslims. They actually attack Muslims.
Oh, that might be a problem.
Everything that you love. This movie goes, well, let's destroy it.
Wow.
Black people, MC Light. I mean,
That was the movie that you found on YouTube that was so triggering.
Yes.
You want to show that?
I've showed M Toussaint scenes after the show. Did I show you the scene with the trans people in Toussaint? Did you watch that?
Yes.
It made no sense whatsoever.
Made no sense.
My goodness.
Yeah, no, it's pretty for an era of hip hop that's supposed to be hip hop's golden age, the early '90s. And I found out that the entire crew from the movie Juice, film crew, worked on this movie. They said there was no stop. Juice rapped. The next day they were on Fly By Night, and I'm like, how can a movie like Juice and have the same people? And there's a scene where you see Daryl Chill Mitchell's whole hog.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How did you miss that on the edit? It's one thing for a boom mic, but a dick is very different than a boom mic.
Oh my gosh.
On that note,
Is it very different from
reject
the boom mic? Depends on the dick.
The whole hog.
Oh my gosh.
And on that note, we will see you guys in the champagne room. And Pascal,
yes,
we are
out.